Welcome back to the Behind the Well Show. Your host, Roger Abel, here with Elias Randall. Elias, good to have you back in the studio today.
Happy to be here.
Good, good. Hey, over the weekend, I was reading an article on MSN. 3 pieces of money advice clients never want to hear. I actually thought this was a very good article. I think you have a copy of it. What did you think of the article?
I do have a copy. I mean, it's pretty accurate. I don't, and it's kind of hard to, right? There's not a whole lot of context with it, but I will say the 3 things that they spoke about: not saving enough, at times needing to take more risk, and then having too much money tied up in a house. I think those are 3 pretty common things that a lot of investors, I'm not going to say do incorrectly, but I guess you could say do incorrectly or just not addressing those things correctly. So, and those are harder. I don't know. Is it hard to tell someone you're not saving enough money? I guess if that's what they need to hear, that's what you have to tell them.
Here's my take on this. These are all education issues. Nobody's been educated on how much they need to save. So what's the default if you haven't been educated on what you should be saving? The default is I enroll in my company 401k to get the match, and people assume that's what they need to do to be successful. So that's the first thing. The second one, you need to take more risk. Once again, I think this is an education issue. People default to this conservative mentality when they're in the world of the unknown. Most people, if you lined up their 401k options and asked them what they were, they don't know the difference between a large cap growth fund and a fixed income fund. Seriously, most people don't know the difference. So that's why they developed target date funds, right? That's why they were developed, was to make it easier for people to determine what their risk may need to be. Okay, the problem with target date funds, they get less aggressive as you get older. So that's an education issue. And you can't afford that much house, education too. The bank is willing to loan you the maximum amount. The bank's not going to work through your budget with you. The bank's not going to make sure you can afford this house. The bank's going to make sure you can afford this house based upon a debt to income ratio. Yeah. So if you're spending, let's say your gross income is $10,000 a month, the most the bank's going to let you have from a debt standpoint is around $3,600 to $4,300 a month. If you spend $4,000 a month on subscriptions, the bank doesn't care because technically your debt to income is within that range. So when you look at affording a house, you need to be taking a look at, hey, this is how I spend my money. Here's my gap or what I want to allocate towards a house, and then back into the numbers versus what everybody does. And that is we run to the bank, we get a pre-approval letter for the maximum amount, and then we go shop for a house at the maximum amount or slightly more, and then we hope to get the price down. That's how that works. And truth be told, most of the banks aren't carrying the paper on these mortgages. A lot of them are packaging the mortgage up and reselling them.
And they'll just do what it takes to make the numbers work out, right? I've been on a phone call with a client in a bank where I can make the argument that this client cannot afford this property. This is not setting them up for success. Well, but if they take this out and do this down payment, and then their debt to income ratio based on their withdrawals is going to be what it needs to be. But this was a situation where I was already dealing with an overspender who had an affordable place to live. So now the overspender has a place to live that's less affordable than where they used to live. So that doesn't solve the overspending problem.
Well, and in the bank's defense, they don't know.
Yeah, they don't know that.
Overspender. It doesn't show up. It's kind of like buy now, pay later.
And I'm not knocking the bank. They got to write their loans and make their money too, right? But they know they're going to, I guess my point was they're going to figure out, if you want to work with them and really buy a house, they're going to tell you exactly what you need to do to get it figured out, whether you can afford it or not, based on their metrics. Their metrics are going to say you can afford it.
People should remember that when you're buying a mortgage, somebody is selling you that mortgage. Their only concern is that it goes through underwriting. The person's selling the mortgage, concerned that it goes through underwriting in a legal fashion and gets approved. They're really not concerned about the individual as to whether they can really afford that house. And honestly, they wouldn't know. They don't know, other than if you have debt. You know, if someone...
Right. They wouldn't know the spending habits like we would of a client.
Right. So most people buy too much house, which snowballs into, hey, now I can't save as much money. And one of the reasons you probably have to have more risk is you're making up for saving less. So I actually thought it was a good article because it explores basically three facets that arguably everybody is going to do at some point, unless they've been highly educated on this. And most people haven't been. And I commend those listening to the show because you're trying to get educated, and that's how we learn and get better and do those different things. But I thought that was a really good article. And the second one I checked out over the weekend was regarding inheritances. And we've talked on this show in the past about how the average inheritance lasts less than about 18 months. But this article was about Gen Z, and they're expected to receive about $320,000 in inheritance dollars. But what was kind of cool, it talked about what the priorities were for the individuals who would be receiving the money. And there's a number that stood out to me, Elias, and that is 76% of Gen Zers who plan on getting an inheritance, 76% of these people plan on saving or investing some or all of that money.
It's a good idea.
What's your insight into that? I mean, what do you think the driving force is? And then I'll kind of tell you what I think the driving force is behind that number.
Between why Gen Z is planning on doing that?
On the 76%.
Well, I'll say this. It's what they plan to do. So what they plan to do and what they do could ultimately end up being two different things. But I do think there's more, in general, consumers and clients and investors are more aware of saving and investing now and the importance of it, probably because that's the main long-term savings vehicle now is 401ks. So like the people retiring now, their main retirement source is typically a 401k. And if you're Gen Z getting into the workforce and getting started out, you know, no one's talked to you about a pension or other things that people used to have. So all you really know is I need to save in my 401k, which then probably lends to if I do inherit money, I'm going to want that to accelerate my savings and investing. It's probably just more a sign of the times and the way people do things, I guess.
This is where you have to look through the numbers a little bit. And I think one of two things is happening. One, 76% plan on using it for savings or investment because they don't want to save or invest themselves. That could be one option. Like, oh, well, I'll inherit this money and that'll be my retirement. We've ran into that a lot with people. Well, I'll inherit
that's
money.
Not the adult thing.
Not the adult thing to do. Or two, and this might bode well for this generation. If you think about Gen Zers, they're technology adopters. They're into fintech. They're on TikTok. I mean, they're the Robin Hood movement of today, right? They're the people or the individuals who are involved in this. And it could just be that their curiosity and their passion for investing money and trading and doing those different things, they're excited about saving it. It might not be that they have to. So this is where I wish there was more context to it. Like if there was a question, do you believe how much are you saving today? And then we could compare it against this 76%. Because they are the group that has taken a pretty big, just a leap to look at investing and learn. That's what they're all on TikTok. There's a little hashtag called FinTok now because this is where they're getting their financial advice. So
I think the other thing to remember, this is how they plan to use inheritance. But in human behavior is very hard to change. And
for sure.
Habits of humans in general as a group are pretty sticky, and most inheritance is wasted. So if 76% are planning, well, on saving and investing the inheritance, what's the data actually going to show that they do with the inheritance? probably going to be a different story.
Something less. So number 2, though, was paying off debt, excluding mortgages. So 40% of the people polled said they would pay off debt with some of this money, which that's a pretty responsible thing to do. I wish the first step here would be pay off your debt and then invest the money. But there's not a whole lot of other data behind that. One thing I think is maybe just the amount of student loan money and student loan debt that this generation has might be leading them to the idea of we're going to use this money to pay off these student loans. So just a couple of articles that I was doing in my free reading over the weekend as I try to stay up on some of this and bring fun content that I thought was interesting.
That was really fun content. Good job.
Are you ready to take control of your financial future? The financial professionals at Premier Investments and Wealth Management are the guides you've been looking for. Picture this, a financial plan tailored exclusively to you. Our team of experienced professionals will work closely with you to understand your aspirations and develop a personalized roadmap to get you there. Whether you're dreaming of retirement, buying a new home, or sending your kids to college, we've got the tools to give you confidence in your financial life. We'll help you navigate saving and investing, retirement income, and tax strategies. Our job is not just about making money. It's about helping our clients make smart choices. We'll provide you with the tools and knowledge to confidently steer your financial ship toward a brighter future. Are you ready to embark on your financial journey with confidence? Visit www.btwealthshow.com or click the link in the description of this podcast. Your financial future awaits.
I don't know, about 6 or 8 months ago, there was kind of a big stir out there about withdrawal rates and how much people could take out of their retirement account. There was let's call it a celebrity financial person who said you could take out 8% or 10% out of your account every year. And there was massive blowback by the investing community as to, well, this doesn't work because really the 4% rule is how you should live. So I thought today, let's explore different withdrawal strategies because it's one of the most important things people are going to have to think about as they head into retirement is how am I going to take the money out and make sure that it lasts as long as I do? And how do I eliminate some of the risks associated with it? And I think the most common rule that most people know is the 4% rule. And that was actually discovered by a financial professional named William Bengen. This is in the late 70s, early 80s. And said if you have a portfolio that's a 50 to 75% allocation to stocks, you can expect that if you take 4%, your portfolio should last your retirement. Now, some people need to take more, some people need to take less, but let's just kind of talk about the 4% rule, what the good is, the bad is. There's a study done using Bloomberg terminal, which people don't know what that is. That's a very common terminal used in the financial industry to analyze stocks, bonds, mutual fund research of any kind in the financial arena. And they took this back to 1927. This is from the Capital Group, Capital Investment Advisors. Went back to 1927, examined a 4% withdrawal rate, starting with $1 million in portfolio value. Adjusted the withdrawal for inflation. They used 3% for inflation, 5% for stocks, 3% for bonds. Over this test, in a 60-40 portfolio, the chance of sustaining your money for 30 years, the 5 worst scenarios were 30 years, 31 years, 37 years, 38 years, 39 years. So I want people to think about that. If you're 65 and you're living by the 4% rule, the worst 5 scenarios were 30 years, 31 years, 37, 38, and 39 years. That puts everybody at 95. And we've had the discussion that the 4% rule definitely helps mitigate the risk of running out of money. But one of the other things it does, and this is the negative to it in my opinion, you run the risk of drastically underspending in retirement, especially early on.
So running out of money is probably I could probably make an argument the scariest thing for retired folks, right? They don't want to run out of money because then they can't have the lifestyle that they want. So a couple thoughts on this. I think the assumptions in this example are pretty good. And, well, they're a little conservative, I think. I mean, 5% long-term for stocks, I would say, is conservative. But it's probably good to be conservative in your projections. They're also adjusting the withdrawal rate to inflation, which is a good thing to do. That's kind of that might be where you start to have some maybe discrepancies in the results, because a lot of retired people don't change how much money they take out very often. Yeah. Not on an annual basis, at least. They don't, okay, we had record inflation in 22 and into 2023. No one called and said, hey, I want to raise my withdrawal 9% because we had 9% inflation.
That's a really good point. People don't inflation adjust their withdrawals.
No.
Now, they may come back 4 years later and say, hey, I need another $300 a month. But it's not like, hey, I was taking $1,000. Now I need $1,030. It doesn't work that way.
Right. Now, I've had probably a couple calls in the last year of, hey, is it okay if I do like another $500 a month? Everything's more expensive now, but a couple phone calls compared to the number of people we're helping, very small percentage, right? So if you're starting out, that's where it's hard to define, or I guess that's where it's hard to compare, because if I start with a 8% withdrawal rate, but I don't adjust for inflation for a decade, well, when did my 4% withdrawal rate, when I'm factoring in inflation, then catch up to the 8% I started at the beginning? And I think there's other factors too that go into it, as far as this is also meaning you have money left at the end of the 30-year period when you're 95. So is having money left one of your goals? Do you want to have money to leave to people? Do you want to just spend your money and enjoy it? There's a lot more to it. I think I share with people, the 4% withdrawal can get you kind of on the path. Like, that's a decent way to think about it, but that's not necessarily, you don't necessarily need to do that to be successful. You can have a more unique strategy to yourself.
Think about how we put together a financial plan for somebody. We run through, what are the needs? How much do you need to meet your monthly living expense, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is, what are your wants? What do you want to do? I want to take a vacation every year for the next 10 years to Europe. It's going to be $10,000, whatever that number is. And then what are the wishes? Because if you prioritize needs, wants, wishes, that's how you get to this point where you have this really great retirement. If you can quantify, do all of these things work? And then if it doesn't work, what do you think you cut first? You cut the wishes, and then you go to your wants. If people spent more time envisioning what retirement was going to look like, it would help them determine how they're going to spend money. People are too focused on just the money part of it versus, hey, this is what I think I'm going to do. And it goes back to people massively underestimate how much they're going to spend in retirement. Every person that comes
underestimate?
Underestimate. 100% they underestimate. Most people underestimate, because they'll come in here and we send them out, we send out our digital intake form, or we give them a paper intake form to start getting financial data. Well, how much money do you spend each month? Or how much money do you spend each year? And 9 times out of 10, what do people bring us?
Their bill. Their fixed expenses.
That's it.
The bills.
The bills. Well, maybe like a detailed one would have, hey, this is what I'm spending out to eat and groceries and gas, because they're running Quicken so they can pull the numbers. But very few people are thinking about, okay, I'm retired now. Do I want to take an extra vacation or 2 or 3? So our bills are X, our wants are all these other things. They forget they're going to buy a vehicle in retirement, or 2 or 4. I had a buddy of mine, his dad, he told me a story. His dad retired, and he called up his son and said, hey, I just bought a new car. And he's like, oh, that's awesome. He goes, yep, this is my last one. He's like 67. And his son's like, wait a minute, you're going to buy like 5 more cars. I mean, a car's not going to last you 30 years. And sure enough, he's had like 4 cars. But people aren't envisioning themselves buying more cars in retirement. So I think it's why the best strategy to figure out how much you should be taking out involves a very well thought out, in advance, and well-written financial plan to start to figure out what the appropriate distribution strategy is for you.
I think some of the reason people underestimate their retirement spending, part of it is, I think, the popularity of the 4% withdrawal rule, because people who start to go online to educate themselves, that's really what you find, is you find a lot of 4% withdrawal rate rule articles and things like that. So then I think people kind of get anchored to that number. But when you start to show people, well, you could spend X for the first 10 to 15 years, I think a lot of times clients, one, they really appreciate that, and two, it's almost like in a way, it's almost like a permission slip to spend your money. They just needed someone else to show them a way that they could do it. And still, you're not going to run out. You should still be fine over the long term. And it's kind of, but you kind of take people from, okay, I need this, and then when they know they can spend, I just think there's a lot of confidence there when they know that they can spend more, and then they're not worried about buying a vehicle or going on a trip.
It goes back to, you can do this, you can do some of this stuff yourself, and you will get a result. The question is that the result that you want? That's why people just subscribe to the 4% rule, because that's the do-it-yourselfer motto. That's great. Go for it. But do you want to just get by in retirement, or do you want to thrive? You want to set up how you want to have it, and you're going to get a result. Or you can get an optimized result, and that's why you work with an advisor, and you get a plan done. It's a well thought out result. Speaking of results, something else that I noticed, 2024 Roth conversions are significantly higher this year than previous years. There's a 44% year-over-year increase in the number of Roth conversions during the first quarter of 2024. And I have some reasoning that I believe goes with it. Some is my personal opinion. Some is things I'm seeing in the industry in general. But the question is this appropriate for everybody? Because I think there's a lot of things people don't think through when they do this. And some of it we kind of bring to light. Have you noticed with your individual clients, the percentage is up? What I could tell you is the inquiries from clients who aren't doing Roth conversions for me are definitely up. Yes. Doesn't mean we're doing more, but the inquiries are up.
I get asked about it more than we actually do it. I think the inquiries, the inquiries definitely more people ask. I think there's a lot of, I think the reason this stat is up is because of 2025 when the 2017 Tax Cut Act sunsets. So I think this is something people have been talking about and learning about, and then now there's more sense of urgency because, oh yeah, I should probably think about doing that. I should probably maybe do that. Well, now you only have 2 years left to do it, 2 or 3, right? So there's probably more sense of urgency to do it. So now people are asking more questions. But with retired folks, when you really start showing them kind of the break-even points and then the impact on their Medicare premiums, and if you're already going to take money out to spend, it starts to get really hard to make the argument for a Roth conversion unless you just purely view the transaction as legacy money. I think if you say you want to leave money for your beneficiaries, the most tax efficient way for them, not for you, but for the beneficiaries, then that's easier to make the argument for the conversions. But there's a lot of cost that comes with it outside of just the initial tax.
I think a lot of this has been driven by marketing. A lot of financial advisors market to this to get people worried and concerned. You remember about a year ago, we had 3 different clients who'd watched the same webinar. Same group put it on. And one out of these three was the Roth conversion actually appropriate for. But they all came in and said, I have to do a Roth conversion right now.
Really? Right now? We should talk
about
that.
If anybody tells you right now, it's probably not that you've never met over a blanket webinar. That's not great. But I think a lot is driven by marketing. That said, there are good reasons to convert to a Roth IRA in some situations. I've said this for a long time. The Roth IRA benefits a certain subset of people the most. Younger people who have a long time to let this money grow in a tax-free space. Wealthy people who have a bunch of excess money and can figure out how to get it into a tax-free space. And those who want to transfer wealth. Most people who are 64 years old and thinking about doing a conversion, you really need to look at what the benefit of this is for you. And this is where setting out priorities for your money. So if somebody came in here and said, hey, I want to make sure I've got a $2 million IRA. I want to give each one of my kids $200,000. Okay. Well, then maybe we start figuring out how to convert $200 for each one so it goes to them tax-free. But think about this. If someone converted a $500,000 IRA, their Medicare premiums just went up. They moved into almost the highest tax bracket, incremental tax bracket on those dollars. And what's the benefit if they pass away 12 months later? Because
to them, nothing.
Well, there's a benefit kind of to the kids.
I'm saying to the client.
Right, to the client, nothing. But here's the thing. Before, you used to be able to inherit that Roth IRA and let it grow tax-free. Right? You didn't have to get it out in 10 years. Now the beneficiaries have to take out that Roth money within 10 years. So the idea that it's really great so you can pass this legacy tax-free money on, it was way more powerful 3 years ago before they changed the tax law that requires this money to come out in 10 years. Think about if I wanted to transfer money to my kids or my grandkids, and I'm giving them a Roth IRA to a 20-year-old, and I'm transferring $500,000. They can let this thing sit and grow forever. Now it's 10 years. So there's another benefit that's been actually taken away that people need to look at in those Roth accounts. And I'm not saying they're bad. We do them, and they're appropriate for a lot of people. But if you're going to take money out in the next 1, 2, 3, 5 years, you really need to take a hard look and determine whether this is the right move for you.
Recently, so I gave a presentation about charitable giving recently, and one of the questions, which it was a really great question that came up during the presentation, a lady in the audience said, I was thinking about converting all of my traditional 401k to a Roth when I retire. Part of the presentation that we gave, though, was about how there are tax-free ways to give money from an IRA. So then she made the comment, but after listening to this presentation, I'm starting to think, I already know I want to give away some money, so maybe I shouldn't convert all of it, because once I can do like qualified charitable distributions and stuff like that, I can give the money without paying the taxes. So I think there's also those considerations too. Like if you're going to have a giving strategy as a part of your financial plan, you can look at your taxable accounts first, right? Because that's a way to get some of that money out of there without taxes. And then you didn't convert to a Roth or take a distribution. But I thought that was probably good for the lady who asked that question to see the presentation, because she had already decided all of her pre-tax money needs to go into a Roth. Why? I don't know. I don't know her. It could have been she saw the webinar that we know our clients have watched. Maybe her financial advisor or tax person was suggesting that. But I think that's also a consideration too, where if you're going to give away some of the money, maybe just keep it in the taxable account and give it from there. You have to get to a certain age to do that, but also something to consider.
So, Elias, 2024 is our year of personalized advice. One thing we've done on every single show this year is we've taken a common piece of financial advice or a financial myth, and we discuss it. This week, we're going to actually talk about financial success, what it is, but most people view financial success as the six-figure income, and that's the promised land. And what they don't actually anticipate is once they reach that milestone, the lifestyle a lot of times consumes it. So income isn't necessarily the goal, building wealth is. And I have a great example of this. When we're running through a financial plan with people, the first page, it asks, we have on there, what's your income? And everybody wants their income to be exactly right. You know what the first thing I tell them is? The income number right here only drives one number.
Savings.
It only
plan contributions.
That's it.
Basically.
That's all it drives. And I tell them that up front. And as soon as I get them thinking that way, they're like, because I'll have people ask, they'll say, what if I decide to take a job that pays me half as much because the one I'm doing is just destroying my body? Well, doesn't affect your retirement outcome as long as you keep your contribution the same. And they start to think that, oh, wait, how much money I make doesn't determine what retirement looks like for me. How much I save determines what retirement looks like for me. And I think a lot of people view individuals with high incomes as, well, they're wealthy. I had a banker one time tell me, there's two types of people in this world. There's wealthy and they're affluent. I go, really? I go,
what is the difference?
That's what I said. I didn't know.
All right,
wealthy people save money and build wealth. Affluent money make a lot of money and spend a lot of money.
Oh, yeah, I can. Yeah. That makes sense. I share with almost every young client and investor we work with at some point, your income is not going to determine the success. It's what you save and keep for yourself. Because if you make $1 million a year, but you spend $1 million a year, you're never going to have anything saved. Now, you make a good income, so you probably have a nice lifestyle, right? But you have to be able to save the money too. And I just did a financial plan presentation for a young family that's very successful. They're good savers. They live a nice lifestyle. They're doing a lot of the things we talk about. And when we talk through what you're talking about, how the income only drives the savings, in the meeting they asked me, they said, so really what you're saying is we could make less money throughout time, but if we save this amount of dollars, we're going to be on track for long-term retirement success. I said, yeah, that's exactly right. One of you could stop working if you can still save this amount of money. It doesn't change your long-term outlook. Now, it would change things in the short term. Now you have less money coming in means probably don't have as nice of cars. You can't go on as many vacations. Like, there's give and take with both, but that is true. What you save is going to determine your success, not your income.
With that said, I want to thank everybody for listening to today's show. If you're not following us on social media, you can follow us on X, Facebook, YouTube. If you like the information you get here, make sure to subscribe. If you're looking to get your one-page premier vision document, which is our condensed financial planning document, you can go to btwellshow.com or click the link in the description. Do you have anything else you'd like to say, Eli?
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
The following is a paid advertisement program provided by Premier Investments and Wealth Management. An airing of the program is not to be considered an endorsement or recommendation. The opinions expressed are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily of KFXR or iHeartMedia. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. The opinions voiced in this show are for general information purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Premier Investments and Wealth Management and LPL Financial do not provide tax advice. Please consult your tax professional. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. All performance referenced is historical and is not a guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of the strategies. Investing involves risks, including possible loss of principal. Traditional IRA account owners have considerations to make before performing a Roth IRA conversion. These primarily include income tax consequences on the converted amount in the year of the conversion, withdrawal limitations from a Roth IRA, and income limitations for future contributions to a Roth IRA. In addition, if you are required to take a minimum distribution, R&D in the year you convert, you must do so before converting to a Roth IRA. Consult your tax professional about eligibility to Roth and traditional IRA contributions. Contributions and earnings in a Roth IRA can be withdrawn without paying taxes and penalties if the account owner is at least 59.5 and has held their Roth IRA for at least 5 years.